Well, welcome in, everyone. A progress report on South Carolina's Department of Social Services shows that dozens of children in foster care had to sleep in DSS offices.
This report cites placement instability and a lack of adequate resources as the reason why these children did not have a place, or home rather, to sleep at night. Joining us today is DSS Chief External Affairs Officer Connelly Ann Ragley to explain to us and give us context to this issue. Connelly Ann, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having us.
So Judy, as we know, we've been receiving tips and concerns from viewers telling us that they've been hearing that children are sleeping in the offices, DSS offices, because they didn't have any place to go. Before we start, we know that this is not just an issue that's happening here in South Carolina, but it still is a concerning one. Can you please explain to our viewers why the DSS office was the only option at that time for children to sleep in at night?
Absolutely. You know, you're right in saying that this is not just a South Carolina issue. It's something that we see nationally, and really that placement instability or volatility as we describe it. And really some of these can be drawn back to the COVID-19 pandemic. You know, we've had a good number of foster parents that have maybe changed their direction. Maybe they've taken a temporary hiatus. We've also seen some of our providers that are struggling, just like a lot of other businesses in our community that do not have the resources and the staff to help and care for these children and youth. And so it's really a much larger problem, something that is not just a DSS issue, but really if you go out and look at it at a different level, you know, child welfare is so much more than just DSS. It's really a child health and well-being system. And we're seeing some children and youth, especially teenagers, that are coming into foster care that haven't been abused or neglected. And it's really just parents are exhausted, they're frustrated, and they're not receiving the mental health services that they need. Maybe there's some developmental issues that haven't been addressed, or other needs that really parents are just very frustrated, and these children are coming into foster care, or they're being served by another state agency or involved in the juvenile justice system.
So, Connelly Ann, when you take a look at this issue, I mean, obviously DSS accepts a huge responsibility for the health and welfare of these children, but it's going to take our whole community to be able to address it. The need for more foster parents. I mean, just give us an idea right now, not that you have to cite numbers off the top of your head, but you know, we've covered this issue for quite some time. The gap between how many children are waiting and they're in need, and how many people are willing to open up their homes and to be a foster parent.
Absolutely. So as of this morning, there are 3,644 children and youth in foster care. And if you look back over 4 years, we're down 1,000 kids. But the placement issues still remain. I mean, imagine being a 16 or 17-year-old teenager and you need a acute medical bed. You need what's called a psychiatric residential treatment facility. They're hard to come by. Those beds are really, really hard to locate. And then we do have some foster parents that you know, have very strict age groups, that they only want to work with an infant. They only want to work with a toddler. Well, that teenager, that 16-year-old or 17-year-old, they deserve that same love and respect and guidance that a young child may need. They deserve that same chance at stability and really that forever home.
And Connelly Ann, I want to go back to the children sleeping inside the DSS offices, because I believe some people are thinking maybe they're sleeping just on the floor. They don't have blankets, you know, just picturing just students, or excuse me, children on a cold office floor. What is the environment?
Sure. So I think it's important to realize too that foster care is not an 8:30 to 5 p.m. job, in that children come into foster care because they've been placed into emergency protective custody by a law enforcement agency, or they've come in through the order of a family court judge. And foster care does not turn off at 5 p.m. and that children come into foster care at 2 a.m. and 2 p.m. And so while those children are in a DSS office or another facility that is like a day service center to try to keep them comfortable, our DSS professionals are looking for placement. They are trying to reach out to relatives. They are trying to find the most appropriate placement for that youth. And so we have a lot of nonprofits in the community that have really just wrapped around us and to provide and upfit spaces for children to wait, where there's comfortable couches and televisions and video games, so that these children, think about it being traumatically removed from your child, from your home, usually with just the clothes on your back, and they are being brought into foster care by law enforcement or a judge's order. And so, we do have a lot of nonprofits, a great one called Lily Pad that has really worked to upfit these offices to make it as comfortable as possible. And again, trying to minimize that trauma, especially let's say you're a child and there's a domestic violence event at your home and you're pulled out of your bed at 2 or 3 a.m. in the morning, you're going to want to have somewhere soft to land. And that's for just one example of the Lily Pad nonprofit that has worked to strengthen and improve our spaces.
Well, on our interviews here on WIS, especially at 5:30, we work to really take a deeper dive into these issues. Not only, the headlines that capture everybody's attention, but how can we be a part of the solution? So when we come back, we'll talk about that aspect as well and what it takes to be a foster parent if somebody is willing to open their home and their heart.